and in the middle of the seance, one person fell and died. In the middle of the seance. It's a famous case. Actually, before he died, he ran into the bathroom because he started to realize that something terrible is about to happen. And when he went into the bathroom, he saw this, inside the water of the bathroom, he saw the face of Ben Gurion, and he fell and died. So that's a famous seance. There's many, many famous seances. One of them, they communicate with Yitzhak Rabin, asking about the murder, communicating with Holocaust survivor, asking him if the terrible Nazi Ivan the Maniuk is really the real one, because they had a doubt if it's him or not. All kinds of famous seances that took place, but definitely it's not recommended for us to do those things because it's against the Torah. Let's continue. What is it really a medium? How can we communicate with the dead people by using a middleman, like a broker? Medium, it's a person that has extra ability more than the average people, which means he can go into a trance, and while he's half fainted, he is able to tell us what the deceased people are telling us. And of course, it's very easy to check if he's pretending or it's real, because the information that we're going to receive from our grandfather sometimes is very confidential. We are the only one who knows what our grandfather told us 5-10 years ago, before he died, right, in a hospital. And if we're going to hear it through this woman, that our grandfather is telling us, remember what I told you then and then, I want you to do it, or I don't want you to do it, then we know it's real, because this woman doesn't know about that conversation, right? So let's see. Before us, we're going to see some of the greatest communication that were done through Mrs. Leonora Pfeiffer and Mrs. Eileen Gart, two famous mediums that through them people were able to communicate with people who died. Mrs. Pfeiffer from Boston, she was very, very famous in the spiritual world, because in her seance, communication with the dead, her customers were able to call all their relatives in a period of 40 years. She was checked by 7 different teams to make sure she's reliable and she's legit. And they did all kinds of experiments with her. And they all came to the conclusion that she's able to communicate with dead people and pass reliable information. I'm skipping some of the things because I want to be able to get to the interesting parts close to the end. In 1887, Dr. Richard Hodgson, which was investigating all kinds of crooks, spiritual crooks, he came to the United States and followed up for 18 years Mrs. Pfeiffer to make sure her background, how she gets the information, and his final conclusion was that she's 100% legit. And this is one of the seances that she made. She tells one person, I'm speaking to your friend from childhood. She says his name. He asked if you remember that you went to school, you used to jump like frogs and laugh. He said that he was jumping much better than you. He says that he was suffering before he died, but you were not there for him. Then I'm skipping some of the things. In some of the mediums, there's all kinds of ways to communicate with the dead. For instance, one is while she's half losing her conscious, she's describing a person that is above her, passing her information. And they write it down or record it, and later, they compare what she just said to what really took place. But there's another way to do it. One other way to do it is the person who is fainted is holding a pen like this. Not like this, like this. He's holding a pen while he's half asleep. And after a few minutes that they cause the spirit of people, the pen begins to move and write on a piece of paper. But remember, it's not regular writing. She's holding the pen, she's sleeping, and the pen begins to move and write something on a piece of paper. In one of the seances, guess what happened? In the middle of the seance, there were the souls of the most famous musicians, classical musicians, came and started to write their best, the most famous music that they wrote, such as Beethoven, Chopin, Debussy, Brahms, Bach, all the most famous classical music started to write the most famous music that they wrote in their life. And this woman had no knowledge about music. She didn't know how to write music. So obviously when she opened up her eyes, she saw she just wrote Beethoven, she didn't know. But they came, their spirits came, and passed some of their information. A woman named Emma Conti, Italian. Emma Conti, she had spiritual power. She's receiving information from the spirit of a woman named Emily Dickinson. She won 46 awards for songs that she wrote, even though she never even went to high school. She doesn't know anything. She's an ignorant. But she writes music, and she said there's a woman, Emily Dickinson, which was a famous songwriter. She passed her the information, and she writes, and every time she writes a song, she wins an award. Why? There's a dead person passing her information. Let's talk a little bit about reincarnation. The student of the Ari HaKadosh, which I mentioned him before, Rabbi Chaim Vital, writes in his book like this. There's few times I was walking with my rabbi in the field, and he told me, you see this rock? There's a righteous person that lived in this world, and he's been reincarnated in this rock for one sin that he made. And he's pointing at the rock, and he says his name. And they used to go and say, you see this tree? That person is being reincarnated in that tree. And after he was telling me the story, I went to the hometown of that person to investigate if there was a person like this, and the way he described him, if he's real or not, and always he knew what he's talking about. The Ari HaKadosh is the famous Ari 500 years ago. Like I said, all the Kabbalah we know is thanks to him. He was a special soul. But let's see a little bit more about reincarnation. Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh from Modena, in Italy, in Venice, he did not believe in reincarnation until something that happened close to the end of his life. His neighbor gave birth to a boy. A month after his delivery, the boy became very ill. 6 months after his death, he was about to die. The neighbor called up the Rav and told him, Rabbi, come say some Tehillim. My son, my baby is dying. When he came to the room, he saw the baby has few moments to live. He started to read few chapters of Tehillim. The 6-month-old baby opened up his eyes and said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and died right away. 6 months old. You may say that this is a Jewish story, but there are many, many stories like this among the Goyim as well. In Portugal, one baby younger than a year old screamed one day the name of the king, Viva King Juan something, and died. And a few months later, this person became the king of Portugal. This baby came, he announced the name of the king, and he died. Now, when we open up the book of the Ari HaKadosh about reincarnation, we find something very interesting. We all know Samson, right? Samson and Delilah. Samson, as you know, he had a wife, Delilah, Philistine, non-Jew, and his death was terrible. He died with all the Philistines together in a stadium. But Samson, the Arizal told us a secret about him. In the chapter that describes Samson, there's a word Badan, Bet, Daled, Nun. If you play with the letters, it's giving you the word Nadav. Who is Nadav? The son of Aaron. Aaron is the first Kohen, the brother of Moshe.